Welcome, Gabby and Megan. So great to see you. I'm very excited to welcome Pastors Gabby and Megan Elabuni of Jerusalem. John and I were privileged to travel with Pastor Gabby on a tour of the Holy Land in 2018. And Pastor Gabby, along with a dear friend of ours, Pastor Saeed Elabuni from Chicago, co-led that tour. It was a really unique tour, and I just want to say just one word about it. It was called a dual narrative tour. And so we had a Palestinian guide and a Jewish guide, and they worked in tandem with one another to give us the perspectives and the experiences of not only Christian sites and the Christian background, but also from the Muslim and the Jewish perspective. So it was quite an amazing trip, and I have to say that it really was life-changing for both John and I in many ways. So here is a brief introduction for Gabby and Megan, and then I'll turn it over to you. Gabby was born and raised in the Galilee region of Israel and Palestine in a small Christian town called Alabun. He was raised Catholic, but became Lutheran as a young adult and was invited by the ELCA in 2001 to come to the US to attend seminary. Gabby graduated from the Lutheran School of Theology at Chicago and served congregations in the Chicago area and in Colorado before becoming the director for the ELCA Fund for Leaders from 2016 to 2019, when he and Megan accepted the call to serve as ELCA missionaries in Jerusalem. In May, Gabby will become the ELCA director for the Middle East and North Africa, serving as the primary point of connection between the ELCA and our Lutheran Christian partners in this region. Megan was born and baptized in Salt Lake City, Utah. She's a lifelong Lutheran and primarily grew up in Wyoming and Northern California, attended California Lutheran University and the Lutheran School of Theology in Chicago. She was ordained in 2007 and served congregations in Chicago and in Colorado. In 2016, Megan went back to school full-time to pursue a PhD in religion with an emphasis on religion, media, and culture. And indeed, in a couple of weeks or next week, she'll be defending her dissertation, February 18. So congratulations, Megan. She also has written many Bible studies for Gather magazine and articles for Living Lutheran. Megan and Gabby met in seminary and were married in 2006. They have 3 kids, Ethan, Natalie, and Luke. And the family lives in Jerusalem, where the kids attend a local international school. So again, welcome, Gabby and Megan, and I'll turn it over to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Lene.
Gosh, thank you, Lene. Thanks, Penny and Pastor Peter. Thank you, all of you, for welcoming us into your homes for most of you, which is one of the strange and wonderful things about being the church during the time of COVID. For all of the hardship that it has brought, we could not be more thankful that we have the opportunity to be together with the church in this way, across the miles, across the hours. Some of you may not know, when we first got on, we said, did we count right? Did we count the number of hours right? Are we on time? And across time and distance, it really is a blessing to be with you. Can everyone hear us okay? Thumbs or nods or okay, great. Got at least one thumb up. Well, we wanted to take a chance to
Could be a little louder, Megan.
Okay. Thank you very much. We wanted to have the chance to talk to you a little about our ministry and our life here in the Holy Land, and give you a chance also to ask questions. So really, we can have a conversation about what you would most like to know. But to start with, we thought we would share some images and talk a little about who we are and what your ministry, your ELCA ministry of support and accompaniment looks like for Christians here in the Holy Land. So I'm going to bring up, there we go. Hopefully you can share that screen. Can everyone see? Good, great. Let me just, okay, so I'm gonna play from start so that we can share a few images with you. Since what you're seeing behind us isn't quite as scenic as where we live, we thought we'd bring the scenery to you.
Yeah, hello everyone. It's so good to be with you, and Lene and John. Yay! It's so good to see both of you, and thank you so much for introducing us to your church and to your community. What a joy to be with you today. I always, or most times, like to ask the question: how many of you who are with us this morning, this evening, how many of you have been to Holy Land? And if maybe Lene can count, because I can't see everybody. So can you tell me how many people have been to the Holy Land before?
I can't see the screen, but participants. So, Penny, can you count?
I'm counting. 14. I'm still counting. I think we've got 16 or so.
That have been to the Holy Land. If I'm not mistaken, I saw about 20, 25 people in this group today. Am I right? So more than half have been to the Holy Land. Good for you. So this is the quiz that we have for you today. The picture that you are seeing right now on the screen, where is this picture taken?
And if someone wants to answer, go ahead and just unmute yourself, say the answer, and then mute yourself back.
Mount of Olives, looking toward the Church of the Holy Redeemer.
Okay.
Close. Yes, this is what you are
And the
seeing.
sepulchre over here, yeah.
That's
Great job, Don, and you are the winner. And what you are seeing, it is the old city of Jerusalem, and this big tower kind of in the middle at 12 o'clock. This is the Tower of Redeemer Lutheran Church. This is the tallest or the highest building in the old city. So from that tower, if you look to the right, there are two domes that are gray. I don't know if you can see them at 1 o'clock. This is the church of the, anyone can tell me what you see there? Those domes, those are the domes from the church of the Holy Sepulchre,
which is also known as the Church of the Resurrection. So, which I've always, that's very apt part of our faith, that it's the church that's built on the site commemorating the site of Jesus' crucifixion and the site of Jesus' tomb. But depending on who you ask, Christians in Arabic will say it's the Church of the Holy Resurrection, because it's also the Church of the empty tomb.
Absolutely,
and the empty cross. And so the Church of the Redeemer is right next to it. I mean, really just steps away. And that's a great way to say that when you come to the Holy Land, you may be surprised to find that our church, our Lutheran Christian church, is at the heart of Jerusalem and at the heart of the Christian story. So we are, and have since 2019, we have been ELCA missionaries in Jerusalem and the West Bank. And we came here with our family. So you heard about Ethan and Natalie and Luke. There they are. We came here together as a family with a ministry that's called Young Adults in Global Mission. Now, this is a ministry in the ELCA that's been around now for a number of years. We find that many congregations and parts of the church are connected in some way to YAGM. because it takes volunteers, young adults from the ELCA ages 21 to 29 for a year of international service. And so we started working with that program in 2019. There are 10 country programs, and Jerusalem and the West Bank is one of them. And so in that capacity, we here with our partner church to the ELCA, which is called the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Jordan and the Holy Land. Again, it sometimes surprises people to know that there are Lutherans in the Holy Land, but there are. This partner church is hosted in that Church of the Redeemer, where the bishop's office is. You see that picture. This is the current bishop, Ibrahim Charlie Azar. Bishop Azar has been bishop for 3 years. And the ELCJHL is a small and mighty Lutheran church in the Holy Land. The ELCA has somewhere in the neighborhood of 8,000-9,000 congregations. I forget the number now. The ELCJHL has 6. One in Jerusalem, one in Bethlehem, one in Beit Jala, one in Beit Sahur, one in Ramallah, one in Amman, Jordan. So it is a small church, but it is an incredibly active church, worshiping in Arabic, made up of Palestinian Christians, descended from the very first Christians. If you ask them when they converted to Christianity, they'll look at their watch and then say, about 2,000 years ago. And they'll read you the story of Pentecost, where it says that Arabic speakers were among those at the first Pentecost who heard the gospel. This church has a number of K-8 schools in the West Bank, educational ministries and environmental ministries with seniors. It's a really vital part of communities here. And so it's really a privilege for us to walk with them. Now, our YAGM, when we work with volunteer, they work in those educational ministries. So part of what you support as the ELCA, or you support these young adults who are coming to places including Minnesota, but also all over the ELCA, who go and work with the English teachers in the classroom, with everyone from the kindergartners up through the high schoolers, or who then they also participate in community life. So our volunteers get to participate in the olive harvest, which happens each fall, both on the Mount of Olives and with local Palestinian families. They get connected to host families that become part of the family during the year that they're there. And then we do spiritual formation and growth. All of the YAGM programs do that. We just happen to get to do it in the place of Jesus' life and ministry. So we get to go to Galilee to renew baptism, to ponder what it means to grow in faith as we grow in service. It's a really wonderful ministry, not only for our partners here, but for our young adults from the ELCA. And so that has been our primary work or ministry since we came here, working with the church and then working with the YAGM program. But as you know, things have also been a little different, and it's hard to talk about life and ministry here without talking about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so, Gabby, just a little bit about that.
Yeah, and this is many of you. These pictures are familiar pictures. These pictures are taken from the old market in the old city of Jerusalem. That probably, if you visited the Holy Land, you probably visited the market. And next to the market, you have the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. As you can see from those pictures, the market and the church doors are closed. Many stores are closed in the picture seeing, and that's due to COVID-19. Since March 2020, things have dramatically changed, and things were truly impacted, hugely impacted by COVID. Israel, Palestine, there are many families and many Christian families, Jewish families, Muslim families, Christian families, they depend on tourism. And since March of 2020, tourists stopped coming to Israel because of COVID. The borders were shut down. The families were not able to open their stores because we have been under lockdown this time 3 or 4 times since March of last year. So the main source of income disappeared overnight. So since 2020 up till now, these families are not working. These stores have been closed, and as a result, many families were impacted really in a very sad and significant way. They have lost their jobs, and because of that, they were not able to provide for their families. And when you are not able to work and you are not able to provide, other things are impacted at the same time. So, for example, one of the ministries of the ELCJHL is a guest house called the Abraham House. The Abraham House is a guest house in Beit Jala. And this guest house, a beautiful guest house that, on an average year, many of the rooms are being booked, and the motel or the guest house is very busy. So the kitchen is working, the chefs are working, the cleaners are working, the rooms are being used, and as a result, that generates income. The income of that guest house, just one example, provides 75% of the school's budget. So when there are no tourists, the guest house is able to generate income. That means the school is not getting the support they need. That means the schools
to
are
pay their
impacted.
teachers' salaries.
So the schools are being impacted. The families have been working, as bus drivers or in souvenir shops or in restaurants. They're not working anymore, so they're not able to pay part of the tuition that the schools are asking for. So I can see, as you can imagine, the educational ministry has been struggling financially since then. And that's one small part of the big or the large picture. However, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, even though it's small and, as Megan said, it's mighty, they decided to take a loan in order to continue to support their schools and not cut down on the teachers' salaries or down on pay their employees. And they said, well, not only that, we are going to take that burden and also continue to support families in need in our community, regardless of where they come from or regardless of their religion or background. So you can see the significance of having a church community in this part of the world, especially when a COVID or a disease like this is hitting the whole area or the whole world. But they thought originally that this issue will be resolved, as we, early on we were hearing, oh, this is going to be 3 months or 6 months max, and then we get out of it and move on. Well, it has been, 1.5 now, and we are not able to move on yet. So the church is playing an important role, but the church started now, the last few months, to feel even a bigger impact because that loan that they took is not getting them really far. So where do we go from here? That's a big question. Megan?
So this is a little bit of a report on the ground of what things have looked like now in particular. But as Gabby said, the church remains the church, whether the doors of some of the buildings are shut or they're open, just like you're finding In the US, we're finding all over the world, the church doesn't stop being the church, even when the buildings are closed, or even when the church faces hardships. And so the good news is that we are serving as missionaries in a place that knows what it means to be the church, even when those obstacles are in place. I love this picture because these are two of our colleagues, Pastor Fursan Zamot, who's the pastor of the Arabic language Lutheran congregation in the Old City, and Pastor Carrie Ballinger, who's pastor of the English language congregation in the Old City, coming together on the Mount of Olives for Easter service with masks, you know, outside, socially distanced, but to proclaim that Jesus Christ, who is risen on Easter, is risen over all of the powers of sin and death, including the powers of the pandemic and the powers that have made life so fraught and so stressful for all of us. One of the things that our Palestinian partners have taught us is that they know what it means to live life in this kind of precarious place. And this is where we're going to kind of wrap up our initial hearing, and then want to invite you to ask questions. But as many of you know, Israel and Palestine is a place that has known a lot of contention, a lot of struggle over who this land belongs to and who belongs to the land, who is a home for and who is at home in the land. We live in Jerusalem, a 5-minute drive, if that, from Bethlehem. But in order to get into Bethlehem, we go through a checkpoint. We live in Jerusalem an hour from the ocean, and we can go anytime we want as American passport holders. But we have dear friends and colleagues who were born in Bethlehem or the area, who grew up there, who have never been allowed in their entire lives to see the ocean or even to get into Jerusalem. We are living in a place where there can be a lot of fear and anxiety, and where Palestinians in particular, who are living behind a security wall, who are living in an area occupied by the military of Israel, where they are struggling sometimes to find hope, to plan for the future, to know what it means to live life, and to live in a situation of not knowing what the future will bring. And yet they have hope. They hope in the gospel. They hope in the promise of new life and resurrection. And Christians in the Holy Land, even though they are a small minority, they share that hope and embody that hope in not just words, but in schools, in environmental education, in the hospital, Augusta, Victoria, on the Mount of Olives. And so to be here serving on your behalf is to be a part of helping that to come to fruition. And it's why we're so humbled and honored and grateful that we get to do this work.
You know, one of the things that our brothers and sisters and the Palestinian people that have been living here for so long and going through this struggle and living behind this 30-foot wall for the last at least 20 plus years, they are saying, you know, if your state has been under a lockdown, now you understand what it means to live your entire life under a lockdown. These people that are living human being have been under a lockdown for many years.
For decades.
For decades. So they are saying now you get to taste a little bit of the struggle and what it means to be under curfew, if you have said that or you have experienced that. But they live that way every day of their life. They are always looking behind their backs, trying to figure out if today is the day where they can live and hope, or this is the day that they would die because of who they are and where they live.
All right. Well,
let's pause. Let's pause.
We're going to
for
pause
a little bit.
there
Yes.
and come back to the big group.
Yeah.
So we wanted to give, as we said, that brief overview, but really leave a lot of time to find out what you are curious about, what you would most like to know, what is on your mind or on your heart. And so whether you want to put something in the chat or unmute yourself and ask us anything you like, we'd love to hear.
I have a, I did. I have a question. We were able to go in the fall of 2019 with Biblical Journeys, and we visited with Seeds of Hope, the school in Jericho. And I think a man named Tasada had started that school. And it was really meaningful because it was Christians, Muslims, and Palestinians. And then just this past week, we got another note about a ministry called Lead with Love Ministry in Gaza. And it's also connected to this Johann Hinderle, who took us to Israel. But I am wondering, you mentioned some ELCA places. Do all of you work together? Like when you know about Christian settings like Seeds of Hope or Lead with Love in Gaza, do you meet together or do you support one another in some way?
Excellent question. And not and it's important to know the organization that you're trying to support, because there are many organizations. Not all of them have a pure intention. Some were not here. The ELC is not here on the ground to convert people or to tell them that we are supporting you here so that we can bring the word of Jesus to you. We are the opposite. The ELCA has this powerful model called accompaniment. We are not here to come and take over. We are here to lift up the Christian community and to walk with them like you walk, on the road to Emmaus with Jesus and with the people, to make them shine and to make them the leaders of their own community, and to have them be the ones with the vision for their own people. So when we are here as ELCA, and even though I grew up here, I represent the ELCA with that model of accompaniment. So there are a lot of organizations, just to your point, that are trying to do good, but there are also a lot of organizations that are here not pure intention, and they are not really serving the people on the ground. They are serving their own goals and their own agenda. And we need to be very, very careful when we try to support or when we are trying to walk with the people, the Palestinian people, from Galilee to Bethlehem.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would say, but while I don't know that we work directly with either of the organizations that you mentioned, there is a lot of ecumenical working across churches.
Yeah.
The Lutherans here work with Catholics and Orthodox and many, many different Christian expressions. And I think what Gabby highlights is that this is a place that has a long history of people coming in from the outside, telling them, we think you should do this or be this way. And the ELCA's commitment really is to work to support local leadership, that we don't need to come in and tell our Palestinian partners what they should be doing. We are experts on what it means to be a Palestinian Christian. They are, but we're here to support and walk with them. So I think it's a great question. I want to look at a couple of things in the chat. Phil asked, given the shared histories of the Jewish, Muslim, Christian, any other traditions? Yes, there is at least a fourth smaller religious group here in Israel, Palestine, the Druze community, which is a group that grew out of Islam. You might know it by the fact that Amal Clooney, George Clooney's wife, is from a Druze community. That's my pop culture reference connection for you. But the Druze community is another religious community with long-standing history here. So the question is, can access to Jerusalem and its religious and cultural sites be shared?
Well, that's the hope. That hope, I think, if that happens, then we will be able to say that a two-state solution is possible. Until this, which is a free access to Jerusalem, does not exist, the two-state solution is not even a possibility. Am I clear by saying by saying two-state solution versus access to Jerusalem? Am I clear on that, or do you want me to expand on it?
So I think reading this in terms of access to Jerusalem, not only by tourists or not only by people with Israeli citizenship, but by Palestinians living within the West Bank and Gaza too. So there's
so much in the news, especially on the political side of things, about all of the different perspectives being unable to find any common ground that would enable potentially a two-state solution, so that some of the restrictions you mentioned earlier would not be necessary. So I don't know if there's any hope in the near, medium, long term that people could figure out how to live together, instead of being worried so much that many people are walking around armed, because they see that as necessary for their safety.
And thank you for expanding on that. I have two things that I wanted to share. There is a potential, I would say, for a dialogue, an open dialogue, and an open conversation. And let's keep it this, with the Biden administration now in power than before. I think during the president,
most recent.
yes, what's his name? President for Biden. Trump, yes, thank you.
We've only been gone since 2019.
During President Trump, it was obvious that all the connections and all the relationships and all the dialogues and all the peace talks stopped completely. And Trump and his administration, and it's not sharing something, a secret or something that you don't know, he was clearly empowering the Israeli government to expand their settlements. They moved the embassy from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv. From Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. They did not really abide by the United Nations law and the 67 Green Line. So it was really, really stressful time for the Palestinian people. The annexation, probably you heard about that, to make lands that were occupied by Israel basically legal, and they can just include them as part of Israel. So it was very difficult and very complicated during the President Trump's years of leadership. Now, we don't know what Biden will do or say, but one of the things that Biden did so far is saying, even though Trump stopped all the financial support for Palestinian people, I am going to create or have a an executive order to change that and to support the people, because the people are struggling just about power and who's leading, and it's not the politics, it's about the people who are living there, who are on the wall, that they are struggling daily, especially during COVID. So Biden made an executive order to continue the financial support for the Palestinian people. But where we'll go from here, I don't know.
Maybe that's a good to say. It is a thorny and complicated issue, what peace and justice look like in Israel and Palestine. It's one that the US is heavily involved in because we are so heavily economically invested to the tune of $3 billion of US taxpayer money a year for military to Israel. So if you've ever wondered, why do people in the US single out Israel, Palestine? Why focus there instead on other countries? That's why. It's because so much US money goes into maintaining it. But what is the role of the church? And what is our role? Because we believe, and we strongly, that in the Holy Land can be a really important bridge building, peacemaking presence between majority Jewish Israel and majority Muslim Palestinian communities. The church can be an important partner in peace and violence. But our role is not policy. Our role is not to advise policy or to say what we think the political solution needs to be. Our role and the church's role here is to do whatever is possible for the flourishing of human dignity, human rights, peace with justice, and to work however they can to provide that for people who are living within the constraints of the occupation now. So I'm going to use that to shift a little into some of the other questions in the chat about Augusta, Victoria, and about vaccinations, and about and the schools. So that's a good example of what does the church do in the midst of this situation. Augusta, Victoria Hospital, a hugely important hospital on the Mount of Olives, supported by the Lutheran World Federation, that is if not one of the main places for care for Palestinians in East Jerusalem and the West Bank and Gaza, especially in terms of cancer treatments, kidney treatments, and other specialized care. And they have struggled financially off and on over the years, because it's a huge endeavor to have a hospital providing this much care, but it still keeps going. And so they have been, we know that they've been involved a little bit with COVID. They're not a COVID treatment center, but they have been, but there is, of course, all of the medical care that still has to go on, keeps going on. So they're a really important and vital ministry, even when they struggle. And the Lutheran schools are also a huge part of that. So there are K through 12 schools. We mentioned in Ramallah, in Bethlehem, in Beit Sahur. There is even a university, the first Lutheran college in the Middle East, which is in Bethlehem, the Dar al-Kalima University College of Arts and Culture. And even though they are Christian schools, the majority of the students are Muslim, because the majority of the community population is Muslim. So they are open to students of all religious backgrounds. They offer high quality education and a focus on nonviolence, on conflict resolution. They do model UN.
They do leadership.
They prepare students to take exams in either the Tawjih, which is the Palestinian kind of leaving exam, or the German Abitur, or the British GCSE. In the US, we don't have quite the same system, but they really try to prepare their students for success, to go on to university, to make a positive contribution in their communities, whether they're Christian or not.
Actually, the majority of the students in the Lutheran schools and in the majority in most schools in private schools in the West Bank and in Jerusalem are Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
So, and for them, the schools to take that task on to bring Muslims and Christians together, it's a huge task. It's not just about education, it's about a model for what it means to live together peacefully.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
One of the people asked, have the bombing lessened since the pandemic started? Well, the Israeli bombing of Gaza, or is that what you're talking about, or the other way?
It
Is
was
that
Carolyn. Can you tell us a little more about what you were wondering?
Both. I'm just wondering,
Okay.
overall, is there less physical conflicts going on, or do those continue? Because I don't know if we're hearing the whole picture here or
Yeah.
not.
well, the Gaza Strip is a very complicated place. There are, if I'm not mistaken, more than 2 million people living in a very small piece of land. Most, they are all Palestinians, but they are separated from the West Bank. They are also living under occupation, and they are living under or behind the wall. So they are not able to exit. And the infrastructure of people living in Gaza is in really worst condition ever. The hospitals has been struggling for a long time. The educational system has also been struggling. Funding has been not flowing into Gaza, the Gaza Strip. Food and medicine, etc. It has been also they have been really a major problem. So the standard, the quality of life in Gaza has not been really the greatest. As if I understand correctly, as part of that struggle, the people or portion of the people there, they decided to resist being under occupation, to resist being living in under hardship. So they and part of it is political too. So it's more than just people just wake up in the morning and decide to send a missile to Israel. But even these missiles that they are sending into parts of Israel, these are not powerful missiles. On the other hand, Israel has been, or the Israeli army, I don't want to say Israel because that's not accurate, has been going in and out and bombing the Gaza Strip for many years. And when I say bombing the Gaza Strip, I mean, huge bombs down and destroying the whole infrastructure. So is that great? No, on both sides. What the solution is to be, I hope that solution would be for the Israelis and the Palestinians to sit around the same table and to continue that conversation and to make critical decisions as soon as possible, keeping in mind these children and women and elderly people who are struggling because of the political conflict.
Gabby?
Let's see.
Gabby,
Yeah.
one of the things that John and I learned and we were just struck by when we were there is that in the United States, we're so unaware of Israel versus the Palestinians. Where do the Palestinians live? Are they citizens of Israel? What is the West Bank? What's Gaza? So it was all so confusing to us until we got there and realized, okay, Palestinians live everywhere, but you have the occupied territories, which is the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza. And then you have Palestinians that live within the state of Israel. So that is what was so kind of enlightening to us to find out that they're, you know, that structure, and particularly how most of them are under occupation.
Right.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Lene. Yeah, that's a good point.
And I think there's always this question about what is the best way to prevent violence, or what is the best way to work through violence. You know, this question about what provides really security and a lasting peace. And there are obviously differences of opinion here about what creates that lasting peace. What I think not just our experience, but world history experience seems to suggest is that it's hard to really have true peace if you don't address the underlying conditions. That when there are underlying conditions of inequality or hardship or struggling, then violence is going to erupt, which is why, you know, the ELCA's ministry of advocacy for Palestine and Israel is called Peace Not Walls, in part because history has not shown that walls are ever a permanent solution to creating a just and lasting peace. Walls may separate people from each other. Walls may prevent some kinds of actions from happening. We don't address this underlying condition of human flourishing, human equality, and dignity. And I remember on one of my first trips, in my first call, I served with a pastor who had grown up in what was Eastern Germany before the reunification of Germany. And I also studied there in seminary. And he said he went with a group of German pastors. You know, this would have been not maybe 10, 12 years after the wall between East and West Germany came down. And then they drove into Israel, Palestine, and watched them putting up this new wall. And they said the whole reaction of this bus of German pastors saying, "Oh no, I mean, we lived with this. We just watched this wall come down, and now we're watching a new wall come up." So I want to say, turn to the question in the chat from Penny. A church community here. Here is Stillwater, Minnesota. Here is ELCA throughout the U.S. Here is the ELCA's presence in Jerusalem. What can we do for those that live there? So there are a couple of things that I would say. One is that our partners always say, believe it or not, they are grateful when you take the time to do exactly what you're doing. To open your hearts, to open your minds, to hear stories maybe you haven't heard before, to learn more about what life really is like here for our Christian, our Palestinian siblings in faith, but also their neighbors, to be willing to take an action to hear their stories. And when and
Oh, no. Oh, you're freezing.
they also tell us, yes, sorry.
Maybe try to take off your video for a second, Pastor Megan, Pastor Gabby.
Yeah.
That comes through easier.
And then repeat it because you froze up on us. Are they still there? Okay. I think they're going to try to reconnect with us here. So hang on, folks.
Mm-hmm.
It's Technology Challenge Sunday.
It is.
But just think, if we didn't have this, we wouldn't even get to hear from them. So this has been awesome.
Seems to happen quite regularly.
Yes, it does. So, but we keep working on it. So keep moving forward. So hopefully they'll be able to connect.
Well, maybe when COVID is over, we should arrange another tour. We'll go back meet them in person.
That would be really a neat idea.
I'm down for that.
What's that?
While we're waiting, I have a question about location. When we were there in 72, our first trip, we had a classmate that was the pastor at the English-speaking church at the Church of the Redeemer. And they were archaeologically digging underneath the church to determine whether there was an original wall, a north wall of the city of Jerusalem there. That's important because at the time of the crucifixion, it was a law that no one could be crucified and buried within the city of Jerusalem. And if that were the case, then the current location of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is within the city wall. If they determined that that wall under the Church of the Redeemer was indeed an original wall, and then because of destruction and rebuilding, the wall was built further north, then that would put the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, in fact, outside the wall of Jerusalem. But in my mind's perspective, when we were there, the garden tomb seems to be a more logical location for the burial of Jesus. So it will be interesting to find out if it has been determined whether there was indeed an original wall under the Church of the Redeemer.
Very interesting.
Unmute yourself.
Well,
Hello, we are back.
Hi.
yay!
We're so sorry. The internet just booted us off for a moment and it took us a minute to come back. We're so sorry.
That's okay. So you were just starting to talk about what we could do as a church community, and you mentioned open minds, learning, and then it kind of went all wacky.
Yeah.
Well, one more thing, I think that we all can do that, which is contacting your state rep and tell them, advocating for the people who are living here, especially when you hear things that are not right, and things that when you know that your brothers and sisters, especially the Christian community, when they are struggling, talk to your state representative, advocate for the people here, share the stories, because it's very easy to turn on the news on CNN or Fox News and to hear the other side story. But when it comes to the story of the Palestinian Christians, it's hard to know what they are going through and what struggle they are having. So by having us talk to you, by paying attention to what you are doing or how things are going in this part of the world, you can make a huge impact. Absolutely.
And then the other thing that I would say, so a couple of places you could go if this has sparked some curiosity, if you already do something and you would like to learn more, or if this is new to you, you can go to ELCA Peace Not Walls, or you can go to Opportunity Palestine. ELCA Peace Not Walls is part of the ELCA website and is filled with great resources. And Opportunity Palestine is it's a nonprofit, but that exists to support the Lutheran schools in the Holy Land. So that is their purpose and their mission. And you can learn on their website, you can actually see a video about the schools and more. And then that's a place you can either through the ELCA or through Opportunity Palestine, make a donation if that Ministry of Education is something that you or as a congregation, you feel is a way for you to offer support and help. And then the last thing that I would say, of course, is pray. Please pray for people here. Please pray for all people. for Palestinians and for Israelis, for Christians, for Muslims, for Jews. Please send your prayers for peace with justice. And please know that the people here are also praying for you. Our colleague, Pastor Fursan, caught me once a few months ago when I was at the church, and he said, Pastor Megan, I'm so glad I caught you. I really need you to do something for me. I know you talk to people from the ELCA, and I know that people from the ELCA are always praying for us. They're praying for people here in the Holy Land. And I have been thinking about everything that's going on in the US with COVID, with hard political times. And I want them to know that we are praying for Americans and we are praying for the ELCA. And so that to me is what it means, and to be in relationship, that we pray for and support each other.
Wonderful,
Amen.
wonderful.
Amen.
You know, another thing that has, you know, here we are in the United States, and you talked about news. The just past administration touted this great big, quote, success about Israel's agreements with many of the Middle Eastern countries. Has that created a hardship for the Palestinians? Because I feel it appears as though they've really been left out of the picture.
And that's a good way to describe it, Penny. They have been feeling alone for a long, long time. And not just as if the whole world has given up on them. People, I don't know if you know this, but many people have lost their land, but also many Palestinian homes have been demolished, and many families have been left without a home, without a property, a place to sleep at night, because now that a place that they called home is in the plan of becoming a settlement, or it's in the plan to become a road for Palestinian settlers to take to get their own home. So it doesn't matter as long as it is a Palestinian home, they can demolish it any day. So so your question is a beautiful and powerful way to think about where the Palestinian people are today compared to where the world is today. There are groups advocating for the Palestinian people, but most of these organizations, they are not able until today to get the Palestinian people their own home and their own country, and their own freedom, and to restore to them their dignity. They have been, it has been a struggle for many, many years. So we'll see where we'll end up. At least, Megan said, it circles back to that picture of the cross. We have to be people of hope. We have always to have hope. It might take hundreds or thousands of years to get to that part and to that goal.
It might take until the New Jerusalem comes down out of heaven, because
yes,
that's the solution.
Yes. So I think the Palestinian people always, I heard that because I speak in different languages, so to them in Arabic, they will say that. They say it might take a long time, even beyond our life span, but we're not giving up. I think I see John raising his hand. John?
Yeah, we were in Israel in 2008. And can you see the picture of our guide, Saud?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was Do you know him?
No, we
No.
don't. Sorry.
He was a Palestinian Christian. He described himself as the greatest tour guide ever to live on earth. He was very modest. But we fell in love with him. And he took us to Bethlehem and he said, well, I'm not allowed to go through the wall there. So you guys go along by yourself in the bus. And we went through the gates and we got in there and guess who met us? But he had a back way into the behind the wall and he met us inside. So we just fell in love with him and he was so smart too.
Yeah.
I think he knew every verse in the Bible by memory.
No, I believe it. The guides that we've gotten to know are really wonderful. And what that reminds me of, which is one of the joys here, is that hospitality. When you're welcomed here, you feel like you're a cousin, you know, you feel like you're a part of the family, that you really feel the warmth of that hospitality. I'm so glad you had that.
Well, I do want to be cognizant of everyone's time. It's just a little afternoon. I'm sure we could ask questions and talk with you for a very, very long time. Lene or Pastor Peter, did you have any last things you wanted to ask or share at all? Otherwise,
No, just that I really appreciate you coming to us today, Pastors Gabby and Megan. It's just been was just such a joy to meet you and blessings to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your ministry and yeah, God's peace as you accompany those who are really in a really tough situation, and our prayers and yours are really appreciated.
Well, thank you. We appreciate your prayers and support so much. And it's, as I said at the beginning, it's really such a wonderful thing that we're able to, I mean, you the glitches, to be together as the church in this way. And thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. We really appreciate it.
thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for what you're doing and for spending the time with us today. I think that has been joyful and enlightening and hopeful. And it's so interesting because Pastor Chris preached today on hope. So, yeah.
We are people of
Yeah.
hope.
So thank you so much. And I think we have sparked, another sense of what more should we be learning about and doing.
Mhm.
And-
Gabby,
and-
did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, just quickly, and I know we are out of time, but I see that they already went to the footnote walls website. And I want to also add to that a name that you can reach out to, and she's a fantastic speaker. If you want to learn more about this topic, her name is Karen Brown. Karen Brown. She's the director for Peace at Walls, and I'm sure that you're happy to expand on what we already talked about today.
Great. Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you so much. Blessings to you all. Thank everyone who attended today. I'm so glad you joined us and keep coming every Sunday. Next week, we have a 3-part series on Bonhoeffer with some professors coming from Augsburg. And where's Andy Root from, Pastor Peter?
He's a Luther Sem.
At Luther Seminary. So
Mhm.
should be very interesting and to learn more about that as well. And so please join us, spread the word. When I did send out the notification, I did have one of the newsletters. I think I have another newsletters from Gabby and Megan. And there's also an opportunity that if you want to continue to receive their newsletters, I think you can connect with them too. I'll try to get that information out to you as well. So thank you all so much again for coming and have a wonderful week. Stay warm, but have fun.
Thanks, Penny.
Bye.
Thank you, Penny.
Everyone.